I want to begin by asking you to do something that might feel a little unusual for the start of this talk. I want you to just arrive for a moment. I'm asking you to not mentally scroll through everything you have to do later or think about whether you remembered to respond to that message from your boss. But just arrive here in your surroundings with this video in front of you, being completely focused in this moment. Because what we're going to talk about today only works when you are actually present for it. Now, I have created many educational presentations, and I have noticed that there are usually two types of people who come into this topic. There are those who are deeply, almost spiritually committed to this idea, who have vision boards and morning routines and maybe even journals filled with intentions. And then there are other people who are deeply skeptical, who think that the whole thing sounds like wishful thinking dressed up in some nice language. And I actually have a lot of sympathy for both groups because in many ways, you're both responding to something real. The believers are right in that the inner world matters. What you think, what you expect, what you rehearse emotionally has a genuine and measurable effect on what you do, what you notice, and ultimately what you create in your life. And the skeptics, on the other hand, are also right in the sense that no amount of positive thinking alone can rearrange the external world, or that visualization without any action is actually just daydreaming. And also what some people get sold under the name of visualization is, quite frankly, not anything particularly useful. So what I want to offer you today sits right in the middle of those two truths. Based on my trainings in NLP, we're going to talk about techniques rooted in Neuro-Linguistic Programming, which is essentially the study of how the mind creates patterns, how those patterns shape our behavior, and how we can consciously intervene in that process to create different outcomes. So these are not magic formulas. They are actually practical tools for working with the way your mind actually operates. And when you understand why they work, they become far more powerful than when you're just going through the motions. Let us look at 5 different parts to this. Part 1 is the identity problem that no one seems to be talking about. Almost every conversation about manifestation starts with them talking about goals. What do you want? What are you calling in? What does your ideal life look like? And while that part is not wrong, I want to argue a little bit that it may be incomplete because it skips over something far more fundamental, which is the question of your identity. And here's what I mean. You can want something consciously and sincerely, and exactly the same time you can carry a deeply held subconscious belief that someone like you doesn't get that thing that you want. And when those two forces are in conflict, the subconscious almost always wins. And it's not because it's stronger in some mystical sense, but it's because it's faster. Your subconscious operates automatically beneath your awareness, shaping your interpretations and your responses before your conscious mind has even had a chance to weigh in. So in one instance, you might want financial freedom, but underneath that lives a belief absorbed maybe from your family or some origin that money is something that other people have, or that wanting too much makes you greedy, or that success always comes at the cost of relationships or your integrity, or perhaps you might want a loving partnership, but underneath that want is a nervous system that learned early on that closeness is where you also get hurt. So then your subconscious is protecting you. Or maybe you want more visibility, fame, recognition for your work. But underneath that is some kind of belief. Every time you were told you were too much, or maybe you were told you were not enough, or that standing out was dangerous, then all of a sudden your subconscious thought it was better if you shrink. And I'm not pointing these out to say that you have character flaws. These are just learned patterns. And you absorb them through repetition or an emotional experience, through the messages that authority figures gave you, or maybe social environments you were exposed to. And you made conclusions as a younger version of yourself that drew from these painful moments, and you carried them forward without ever examining them again, and they just stayed in your subconscious. And here's the key insight that I'd like to bring about. The subconscious mind is not trying to sabotage you. It's actually trying to protect you. It is running the most familiar, the most proven, the most emotionally safe version of your life, because that is what it was designed to do. So when we talk about working with the subconscious rather than against it, what we really mean is learning to make the new reality feel as safe and as familiar as the old one does. And that is the work that you have to do. One of the most powerful ways to begin that process is what I call identity rehearsal. And I want you to be able to take this seriously because it sounds simple, but it will go very deep. So let's say every morning before the day starts, ask yourself, who is the version of me that already lives this reality? We're not talking about who you want to become someday. We want to know who is the person for whom this outcome is already normal, already expected, and already just another Tuesday morning. And picture in your mind, how do they hold their body? How would they make a decision? Would they do it quickly, with confidence, or are they still agonizing the way you are right now? Probably not. Would they no longer spend energy worrying about things that maybe you're worried about right now? that new version of you? What have they stopped tolerating that maybe you're tolerating right now? And then just spend the next 5 minutes being that person. So maybe you'll adjust your posture, slow your breath to match theirs. Speak like them, even if it's just in your own mind, with the tone of someone who isn't desperate, who isn't striving, who is simply living in alignment with their own values and capabilities. And this is just repetition of a new pattern that you want to instill. And the subconscious learns exactly that way. Repetition paired with emotional state. Now, I do want to point out one critical caution. Do not try to leap from where you are to some maximum, abundant, limitless, confident self-concept in one jump, because your mind will reject it the way a body rejects a transplant that doesn't match. If you currently carry a deep belief that you are not capable or not worthy, and you start standing in front of a mirror saying, I am infinitely successful and powerful, you will not create that new belief that way. It will just give you dissonance, and that will actually reinforce the gap between where you are and where you need to be. So instead, you need to bridge. You're going to move in steps that the mind can actually accept. Something like, I am learning to trust my own judgment. Or I am becoming someone who handles things gracefully. Or maybe you're just starting out to say, it is getting safer for me to be seen in front of others. And then these statements don't demand a leap of faith. They actually just invite a gradual shift, and that gradual stance is far more durable than any declaration made from a place that you feel inner conflict. And that's how you know. If you can feel that inside that you don't believe it, then you've maybe jumped ahead too far. So just do it in small steps until your body tells you, this is okay, I can accept that thought. Then you can move a little bit further in your next bridge. In part 2, I want to talk about installing a new future memory. Now, I want to talk about visualization a little, because most people are doing it in a way that actually works against them, and I don't want that for you. The typical approach to visualization looks something like this. You imagine the big moment, the peak experience, or the exciting arrival at the destination that you're longing for. And you picture the celebration or the abundance or your transformation to this glorious, famous person, whatever it happens to be. And there's nothing inherently wrong with that. It can be motivating, and maybe it feels good, but it tends to stay in the realm of fantasy rather than conditioning that response. And there's a crucial difference between these two things. So fantasy is emotionally exciting, but neurologically your body is saying, whoa, that's way too distant. And it tends to live in the realm of someday. And wouldn't that be something if that happened to me? And the nervous system, which is deeply practical and present moment oriented, doesn't really reorganize itself around fantasies. So what it does respond to is being familiar. And what it reorganizes around is anything that feels normal or expected or safe. What I suggest, instead of visualizing your peak moment of excitement, I want to teach you to create what I call a future memory. And the distinction is in the word memory, because memories have texture and being ordinary and sensory specific in a way that fantasies often don't. And here's what this might look like in practice. Instead of imagining the moment you achieve your goal, I want you to imagine a completely unremarkable Monday morning, 6 months or a year after you've achieved your desired reality, and it's already established, and there's no special day. It's just an ordinary day that you're experiencing within your completed goal. And maybe you'll just picture, what does that room look like when you wake up? And this is installing a future memory right now as you do this. What do you hear in the room that you're in or in the surroundings? Maybe you notice the quality of the lighting. And what do you do first? And notice that you're doing it without the weight of anxiety or the shadow of scarcity that might be in your existence right now. Think about it. What are you doing on a normal Monday morning after your goal has already been achieved? Maybe you're glancing at your phone, but there's no tightening in your chest. Or you sit down at work, maybe the dream job that you've been dreaming about, and you feel settled. There's no anxiety. Maybe you have a conversation with someone in your life and you just feel ease. So the details in this matter, but you want to make sure it's just mundane, an ordinary day. Make it very specific. You can use sensory details, and that helps to make this exercise neurologically different from just daydreaming. When you can walk through an ordinary day in this imagined reality with the same level of it feeling familiar that you would just actually walk through during an ordinary day, you have done something important here. You have begun to teach your nervous system that this reality can feel like home. And I want to be clear about something else. If you attempt this exercise and it produces any anxiety, so if this image feels too impossible or too far away, and if your mind immediately begins generating reasons why it won't happen, I don't want you to treat it as failure. I want you to treat it as information. It is telling you exactly where the gap is between your conscious desire and your subconscious expectation or belief. And in that case, you need to scale down and visualize a smaller version of your win and build the evidence incrementally. So your nervous system can't make these big leaps. It makes one small step towards the other until it feels familiar, and then another, and then another. And then we'll go into part 3. And that's where you're going to set the anchor and regulate your nervous system. So we'll pick that up next.